Good to see everyone today, and let me tell you, I tell my staff over there, Jamie, wave your hand there, Jamie. He's our district director. I tell him whenever we get a chance to spend time with the Rotarians, we are always going to make way to accept that invitation. And Byron, I want to say thank you for your lovely introduction, because it's always just a joy to spend a little time with Rotary, because I tell you, we live in a time and in an age where so much emphasis is on individual gain, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I totally support it. But when you can spend a little time with folks who also are talking about the common good, that's really a pleasure. And your four-way test, I love it. I like it so much that even though I'm actually not able to be a member of any particular Rotary, I have a plaque with your four-way test hanging in my office. Because whether you're a member of Rotary or not, that four-way test is a good way to evaluate any question that's facing you. I also want to just say that it's really important now that I share a little bit about what my focus is as a member of Congress, and even a little bit about why I ever ran for Congress. I want to tell you it's somewhat ironic that I'm in this job. I was not one of those people who as a child wanted to be a politician or be in Congress. In fact, when I was around in my mid-20s, wrapping things up at University of Minnesota Law School, I did not like or trust most politicians. I'm not proud to say that. I'm not ashamed to say that, but it's just sort of like my concept of things. But I realized that as I had a thirst and a desire to see our society reflect fairness, reflect inclusion, as I believe that government did have a role and a responsibility to try to enhance the lives of people, it became clear to me that at the end of the day, you're going to have someone in a decision-making role making rules that will enhance opportunity, inclusion, and fairness and prosperity for all. You know, it's just not going to happen by itself, and liberty and justice for all, if it's a concept that's important, then it's a concept worth fighting for, and we need people in government and in the private sector and in the nonprofit sector who are willing to uphold these values. So it was right around that time that I decided, I think I was around 34, that I decided to run for the state legislature because I was working on cases as a lawyer one by one, and I thought to myself, well, you know what? There ought to be a law, and so I ran to try to enhance that and try to make sure that, if I'm trying to help people individually, whether it's in a housing matter or some other kind of matter, environmental justice matter, education, maybe if the law were different, I wouldn't have to help people one at a time. We could just sort of take care of it as a matter of legislative action. And then I found myself in the state legislature working hard. I enjoyed the work. I like the aspect of listening to people, sitting down and hearing what people were going through. Some people might have been victims of a crime, and they wanted to know, how can I, as a victim, get a better quality of justice? So they might have committed a crime years ago, and they're like, well, look, I've tried to turn my life around, but I'm having trouble getting back into the job market, and so is there any hope for me? And maybe, I ran into people who had a lot of inhalers and asthma and got interested in that. And I ran into some families after just knocking on doors and talking to folks who had been exposed to lead as a child, and that impacted their ability to even think clearly. And so these are the things that propelled me into politics. The same thing that animates you, service. And so when I ran for Congress, after 4 years there, I ran for Congress because I was concerned about the direction of our country. And I can tell you that 4 years ago, even before that, I began to be very concerned that people were working just as hard as ever, but they just weren't making the kind of money that they needed to meet their dreams in this country that is so well off and promises, I believe, the social compact in America is if you work hard, that you will be able to have a quality of life and be able to see your kids go to college, be able to see your retirement one day, which you can have in some dignity. And so that's why when I ran for Congress, after I won, and there's a whole story right there, one of the first questions was, what committee do you want to be on? And Byron shared with you that I am on the Financial Services Committee. And the reason I selected that committee is because I was looking for a committee assignment where I could try to do something to impact the family budget of average Americans as soon as I could. And the first bill I introduced was a bill that looked at something called universal default. You know what this is? This is if you got more than one credit card and you default on one, you could be deemed to have defaulted on all of them. And I introduced a bill that said if you late on one, then you're late on one. You're not late on all the others or deemed to be late on all the others. And so that actually got enacted into law, and I worked on a whole bunch of other ones that somehow we were able to get passed into law, and I'm proud of that. But the goal was to make sure that this land of opportunity really remains that America is always going to have a ladder up, and that we're not going to concentrate wealth so much in the top part of our economy that hardworking average Americans work all their lives and aren't able to amass the kind of living that they've been working for. And so that's kind of what's been driving a lot of my attention these days. I've been thinking quite a bit about how do we make sure that that hard work pays. And if you look at all the more developed nations in our country, you know, the countries that have an industrial base, the so-called developed countries, you know, what you will see is that our country, which used to for years have the highest rate of intergenerational mobility, now is getting toward the middle. It doesn't make me feel good to tell you this, but it's true. And if you can face it, then you can fix it, but not until then. And so those are the things that really take up a lot of my time. What specifically? Well, this issue of credit card debt is a big thing. This issue of student loan debt is a huge issue for me. This issue of college affordability, which is related to the student loan debt, also very important. I spend a lot of time going to apprenticeship programs because I believe even though college has served me well, not everybody wants to go to college. And if you don't want to go, you don't need to go, because there's a whole lot of very important careers to pursue that don't necessarily involve, you know, a liberal arts degree. So we were just out at the Boilermakers apprentice program last week looking at how people can gain expertise there, because that's sort of an area where you can definitely make some good money. So that's what I've been doing, and I'd love to share with you just a few specific things that are coming up in Congress, but I just want you to know that it is critically important to me that we create in America, recreate it, because we had it, recreate in America where, you know, hard work pays. You know, in 1957, yes, America had a problem with segregation. Women didn't have the rights that they deserved. And if you happen to be a gay person, that's something that you had to be ashamed of or keep in the closet and not let anyone know about. But one good thing about it, one person could feed a family of four. One person could feed a family of four. And when the kids came home from school, there was somebody there. And if the family, if usually it was dad, but I'm assuming not every time, but usually it was dad. If dad got sick and couldn't make it or lost a job, then you had mom in reserve who could come into the workforce and steady the family budget. We now live in an area of the two-income trap, where we got both parents working hard every single day, and if anybody gets hurt, if you've gotten into a mortgage that depends on two incomes. You've gotten into a family budget that depends on income. And if you lose one, you are facing bankruptcy. This is the reality that we live in today. And I don't believe we have to have it that way. I can tell you that I am a supporter of things like the minimum wage increase. And the reason why is because it's absolutely true that that if you're doing well in this economy, then you might be doing extremely well in this economy. And I just think that we've had in America where we didn't have the income disparity that we have now, but the economy seemed to be working for everyone. In 1980, the CEO on average made about 40 times more than the average worker. Today we're up in 300s, and it fluctuates, 300, 350, 402. It's just not a sustainable way to go about things, and then everything else gets hurt from that. And when you make that kind of decision, people who are just barely making enough, they don't save. And I was mentioning to somebody either, this is a particularly concerning for our seniors and our baby boomers who are getting toward retirement age. Because if you've been fortunate enough to be able to save the money you need for retirement, God bless you. We need more people like you. But there's a whole lot of people getting towards 65 who just haven't, and they're gonna have to work into their 70s and 80s. So I spend a lot of time thinking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And on the other end of the income scale, those same folks, you know, all of us have a dream that our kids can reach their dreams. College affordability. There's more I talked about credit cards and student debt. College debt is bigger than credit card debt today. And we have some members of Congress who say things like, well, in my day, I just worked my way through college. It simply isn't realistic today. It's not realistic. University of Minnesota costs $22,000, $25,000 a year for room and board and everything. And so what I'm pushing for is more affordable college, more affordable on-ramps to the middle class like education, sustainable retirement, investment in things like infrastructure, roads, bridges, transit, because that drives a lot of jobs. And by the way, if you listen to the American Society of Civil Engineers, they will tell you that we have about $1 trillion in unmet maintenance needs in America. So I share this with you because I think it's fair to you to let you know kind of just where I'm coming from and what I deem to be important and what I will be spending most of my time on. So I just think when I get back, I'd just like to just share with you just a little bit of a news update. The Senate has completed about 6 appropriation bills out of a total of 11. Is that right? Okay. The House, no, it's the other way around. The Senate has not passed any, and the House has passed about 6. Right, of 11. There are 11 spending bills. The Senate hasn't passed any, the House has passed 6. What that means is that at the end of September, in an ordinary course of events, both houses would have passed 11. But one hasn't passed any and one is only halfway through. What is that? And we're not going to get them done by the end of September. So what does this mean? Continuing resolution. The state government never does this. They actually have to pass a budget. But the federal government can take on debt, so we do. And the thing is that with the continuing resolution just says we're going to keep spending levels at what they were. This is not the right way to run the government. It is difficult on planning. It's difficult and for a whole number of things. I'm actually going to be one of those ones hoping and praying that we can do what we need to do to pass a budget and this proper spending bills. Because when you just pass a continuing resolution, there might be things that need to be cut. There might be things that need to be increased. But the continuing resolution is just do what we did last time, which is not the right way to go. And this impacts the FBI. This impacts everything we do. and it's not. I don't think it's the right way to run the government. Now, let me just talk to you a little bit about another deadline coming up that I'd like you to think about, and that's transportation funding. Now, transportation funding is, I think, incredibly important. In the normal course of events, we passed a 6-year transportation spending bill. 6 years allows state, local, and federal government to plan their projects, allows the people to bid on them, allows the process of transportation to happen in an orderly way. Unfortunately, though, we have a bill that expires very soon in December. What are we debating right now? Why can't we get the transportation bill, a long-term transportation bill passed? Very simple reason. The reason is simply this. We can't agree on a funding mechanism for surface transportation. And it's because we haven't raised our gas tax since the 1990s. I believe we should raise the gas tax. Now, I believe raising the gas tax is conservative. Now, those of you who know me know that I'm a liberal. I'm not afraid to say so. But I'm not doctrinaire, and I'd be happy to work with anyone. And I want to tell you that I think raising the gas tax is being very, very responsible. We're the ones who drive on them. They're our roads. They're not somebody else's roads. And even if you don't drive, you use the roads, because if you bought a loaf of bread last night, it probably came on a road. So we all should be trying to pay the gas tax. I think we should raise the gas tax. This is what we're disputing about right now. Now, I would like to talk to you a little bit about some things that are close to home, and that is this issue of freight rail safety. Now, I can tell you that every year I do my best to visit every single municipality in the 5th Congressional District. And I visit probably many, many more times than one, but I try to check in with the local officials in particular. So last week we met with Minneapolis, and then we met with the Hennepin County folks, and we've met with Brooklyn Center before, and we meet with Golden Valley, Edina, all of them. And I can tell you there's not one single city that is not concerned about this freight rail issue. All are. We've seen derailments in Pennsylvania, we've seen them in Illinois, we've seen them all over, and everybody knows that the trains have gotten longer, they're carrying more hazardous materials. We don't necessarily know what's in those hazardous materials. And local law enforcement, and I'd love to, and we actually, Chief Gatlin, I think we've talked about this issue before, doesn't uniformly feel equipped or trained to deal with a derailment incident. And they've happened, so why should we assume that they're not going to happen here? I guarantee you people didn't think we were going to have a bridge fall down. This is why we have to be prepared for these kind of catastrophes. And so this is something that we're working on very carefully. I introduced a piece of legislation, and we have and we're gaining support for it. It's called the Transportation Research Board. It's called on the Transportation Research Board to study the impact of rerouting hazardous freight material around urban areas. If the railroads are going to build out their railroads, why should they build them on the old corridors that they had 100 years ago? Let's build these things where there's a low population density, so if there is a spill, we can minimize hazard. And also, I've written letters and worked with a number of members of Congress to urge the Obama administration to announce oil safety rules that would do the following: phase out older crude oil tankers within 2 years, make mandatory an urban speed limit of 40 miles an hour, and consider requiring advanced braking systems. You all know the catastrophe that happened in Pennsylvania. The train was going over 100 miles an hour. If you'd have had the proper braking system, that could have been avoided. But this is something that we're focusing our attention on, very serious about working on that. And then I just want to take us outside the United States a little bit, because here's an interesting thing about being in Congress. I have learned that every unit of government works on everything. It's just that we have different levels of emphasis. So you may think, well, it's the feds who do foreign policy, and it's the state that does, certain other sort of rights, and the city deals with the issues closest to people, whether it's, sanitation, fire, police, things like that. Well, the truth is we all work on all of it. And if you doubt that, if there is a catastrophe or say like a dangerous infectious disease in say somewhere like Liberia, the good people of Brooklyn Center, even on the local level, will be dealing with it. Am I right, city council members? Absolutely I am. And so I just want to talk about that a little bit because we worked together. When the Ebola crisis hit, I think that there probably was no community more focused on what to do about it than Brooklyn Center, with a close second, Brooklyn Park. And I want to commend you all for what you did, what the work you did. And I'm going to tell you what I think was particularly excellent that Brooklyn Center did. Now look, you get a disease like this, it's scary. People don't know what's going to happen, and they don't know whether they're at risk, and they don't know where their family is. And let me tell you, when people are afraid, they look out for number one. That's what they do, and sometimes they're not that nice about it. And so we got reports that some of the Liberian kids were feeling ostracism and rejection. And I am so proud that leaders in Brooklyn Center said, wait a minute, these are our neighbors, these are our friends, and we are handling this. This is how you deal with this. This is what you do if there's a case. And they were and you all were very clear on what to do about it. And I think even though some folks felt, some level of ostracism from some individuals, the community felt that this was a responsible, caring, neighborly city in Brooklyn Center. Would you all agree with that? I think so. I can tell you, I went to every single meeting that I was able to go to. I went one with Chief Gatlin's office. Remember that when we had that meeting? Yeah, we had at the fire station and several others. And I just appreciate how the community handled this. And I can tell you, a lot of our Liberian neighbors were reporting that they had 17, 15, 5, 6 of their loved ones dying from this disease and had to hear about it over a telephone wire. And you can't imagine, or maybe you can't imagine how devastating that was to them. And I think it's important for members of a community who have this difficulty know that, they have people who care. And so again, last year I met in the Ebola task force in Brooklyn, right in the community. I was asked at the meeting to seek approval for the Ebola temporary protected status relief, which we did. And we worked with State Department, and this is granted. And the African Immigrant Services helped more than 100 West Africans from affected countries process their papers to receive this kind of relief. And I just want to say that I was really privileged to be called to the White House only a few months ago when President Obama said, look, we went in strong to address Ebola, and at least in Liberia, we have stopped the spread of Ebola. And I'm not saying Ebola is completely wiped out. I know that perhaps in Guinea, where the healthcare system's a little weaker, there still is very serious reason to be concerned, but it's not the threat that it once was. Our country was part of the solution. Brooklyn Center was part of the solution. So thank you for that. Now going to the other side of the continent of Africa, we recently had a great visit by a man by the name of Adam Zubin. Adam Zubin is the undersecretary at the Department of Treasury. So there's the Treasury Secretary, a guy named Jack Lew, then there's a number 2 guy, this is Adam Zubin, and he deals with stopping terrorist financing. He does a great job at what he does, but what we are experiencing is that we're doing such a good job at stopping terrorist financing that we're cutting off even the legitimate money that's supposed to flow. And it's not a good thing for that to happen because Al-Shabaab wants to see Somalia fall back down to being a failed state. Today, just to keep you up to date, Somalia is actually not a failed state anymore. They've made tremendous progress. They're not a failed state, but they are absolutely a fragile state. And they rely on about 40% of the money that the country gets of their gross domestic product. About 40% of it is from remittances, mostly from the United States, but also from the United Kingdom and other parts of Europe. So when they had that war, Somalis spread all over the world, and when they started working, they sent money back home, just like anybody would do here. Maybe if anybody in this room, their grandparents or parents immigrated, you know that that's how folks often do. And so we're trying to get the balance right so that we stop the bad money and allow the good money to flow in. And you should know that many of your Somali neighbors, we know that we're working urgently on this issue because we want to stop the terrorist financing, but we absolutely don't want to stop all the financing, and that is that's a needle that we have to thread. And I also want to let you know that we're working on this in a bipartisan way. I'm very proud to tell you that Tom Emmer, who's the congressman for the 6th Congressional District, and I have teamed up and worked on the Somali caucus. And he's been a friend of mine for years, and I don't believe just because he and I don't see eye to eye on tax issues and stuff like that doesn't mean we don't see eye to eye on a lot of other things. And we've always worked on a number of things together, and so I'm glad to call him a friend. So that's my report to you. Let me just say a very strong thank you to you, Byron. It's always good to see you, my friend. And I also want to say thank you to our chief who's here today, to our council members, Lawrence Anderson and Councilmember Lynn Miskowski. And if there are any other appointed or elected officials here today that I missed, I want to say, our city chief, our city manager, thank you very much for your pre-introduction. And it's great to have you here. And again, please continue to stick with your excellent work here at Rotary. We have got to continue to build a sense of the common good. When you build institutions like this, it doesn't matter who's a liberal, who's a conservative. If you're both part of Rotary, you find the good in each other, and you find a way to work together even though you may have differences of opinion. It is when social institutions which welcome people break down that communication in general breaks down. And so Rotary is one of those places where the business person can meet the law enforcement person, can meet the lawyer, can meet the brand new, the 15-year-old high school student, can meet the senior citizen. This is where we bring people together and build a social network that really helps to keep our community thriving. So thank you for what you're doing. God bless Rotary and Brooklyn Center. Thanks a lot, everybody.